Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the third crop conversation of the week. Thank you for coming along. I want to introduce you to our very esteemed guests here. We have on my left Paul Ilona, Country Manager of Harvest Plus from Nigeria. We have Busi Mazia Dixon, who's the Senior Scientist, Food Nutrition Science Laboratory at IITA, also in Nigeria. Stefan Dahan, Cassava Breeders Network Coordinator, SIAT in Vietnam. And Dominic Dafour, Food Science Specialist, International Center for Tropical Agriculture. So welcome. Thank you, everybody, for agreeing to do this thing today. I hope you all know what your question is. So the format here is I will introduce the topic, and then each of these world-renowned experts will be given one question that they have to address with a reasonably short answer. We only have about 25 minutes. So if everybody is brief, then we maybe get a chance for some conversation and some questions from the audience at the end. But let's see how we get along. So the topic is food and nutrition security. I forgot to introduce myself, I just realized, in case you all don't know who I am. My name is Ben Bennett. I'm Deputy Director of NRI, the Natural Resources Institute in the UK. And I'm an economist, so maybe I have different views from some of the more technical people on the panel here. So, as staple or supplementary foods, roots and tubers are critical sources of food and nutrition security for millions worldwide, particularly for small-scale farmers and their families. Their main nutritional value lies in their ability to provide one of the cheapest sources of energy in the form of carbohydrates in developing countries. The high yields of most root crops also add considerable benefits compared with grains, contributing both to food and income security. They can be important staple crops in areas where soil is poor and other crops may not grow well, often areas populated by the poorest people. They can also be processed and added into diverse ranges of foods and snacks, earning farmers a high income to purchase other staple foods such as rice. So obviously roots and tubers are very nutritious and very beneficial, but actually getting that nutrition in the right form and the right quantity to the people is rather a complicated thing. And we're about to start a new project for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation measuring post-harvest losses, and they asked us to measure nutritional loss. And I don't think anyone's done that before, and I'm now beginning to realize we should not have said yes to this question, because it's actually really hard. So I'm hoping some of you guys maybe have some answers to our challenges with understanding what is the nutritional loss in post-harvest losses. So, Stefan, a breeder's perspective, can you outline some examples of how roots and tubers contribute to food security in the developing world?
Of course I can, and yes.
Always a big relief when people can answer the question.
Yeah, but I'm not going to take the breeder's perspective on this. I want to take maybe a bit broader perspective. And as most of you know, like there's different angles to food security. The angle of access, availability, use of quality, and also stability. And if we look at availability, not only are roots and tubers nutritious, but they are also quite efficient. So if one would compare, for example, potatoes or sweet potatoes in kilocalories per hectare per day, in the case of sweet potato, we have about 70,000. In the case of potato, about 50,000, which compares to wheat, for example, around 40,000. So accumulation per day, they're efficient in terms of availability. Another big difference with roots and tuber crops with availability is they're not global commodities. So roots and tubers, because they're bulky, they generally stay where they are produced. So, for example, in the food crisis, roots and tuber crops were not so much affected by global commodity prices, and actually in times of crisis offer excellent stability for farmers.
Do you think our big push for commercialization, even at a small scale, is going to make some difference to this?
Well, maybe there you can go to the kind of like the second angle of food security, which is food access. Of course, we cannot claim that you can only live on roots and tubers. What people need is dietary diversity. So even though we make a lot of efforts in biofortification and breeding to make roots and tuber crops more nutritious, people still need the typical pie of milk products, vegetables, meat products. So markets help in that sense to get farmers higher income and for them to be able to purchase other products which they would normally not produce. And I think there's a lot of good examples of that. Of course, if you look at cassava in Southeast Asia, all of it is produced by smallholder farmers. They don't consume anything themselves, but it helps them a lot to actually get access to other types of food. Another example from potato, for example, in the high Andes, these native potatoes that are now linked to markets through SIP. The only thing that farmers can produce there is potatoes. They eat a lot of potatoes. The average daily intake, I think, is in some cases above half a kilo a day. But still you have micronutrient deficiency. So linking them to markets allows them also to buy other food stuff. And I think maybe of the food security angle, the least understood of it all is the stability aspect. How do roots and tuber crops affect food stability in a food system? And of course we often claim that roots and tuber crops are excellent relief crops, but the fact, for example, that some of them can be used for piecemeal harvesting is a big advantage that roots and tubers offer.
So how do you define food stability for those of us that don't understand this concept?
Okay, now I think one angle of the food stability is kind of the resilience angle. So if there is an extreme event, an extreme drought or typhoon, how a particular species can still produce even if it's affected by an extreme event.
Very good. So stability of supply is...
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Very good.